Welcome back, everybody. Let's take some notes on industry. So let's start with 3 different sectors of the economy. The first is primary, where you're gathering materials from nature, jobs like farmers, fishermen, miners, loggers. And they're taking materials from nature, which can then be used by the secondary sector of the economy. And that secondary sector of the economy is built off of manufacturing. They're turning that raw material that you got from the primary sector and you're turning it into a finished product. Think people that work in factories or blacksmiths, furniture makers, anything like that. And then tertiary is the bougie word for the third sector of the economy, and that's the service sector. This is offering services to customers like a banker, working in retail, being a lawyer, being a teacher. So in these 3 sectors, you go from primary, gathering raw materials, to turning those raw materials into manufacturing through the secondary sector, and then the service industry, the people who can then sell you those materials, repair those materials, do a bunch of different things. But whether we're gathering raw materials or manufacturing items or transporting items around the world, it's worth asking, where's the power coming from? Well, it depends when you ask that question. And this is a graph that shows us a few centuries leading up to the Industrial Revolution. And while we see coal wasn't a new invention, it was literally the fuel for the Industrial Revolution. But over the past century and a half, we've switched from being reliant so much on coal to being reliant on oil, then natural gas, and now we're in an era with a lot of diverse, different alternative energy sources. Here's another map that really shows how diverse our energy has become, going from just 2, 3, maybe 4 main sources of energy to several different ones. And not one single energy system has more than 30% of our energy makeup. So we had 3 stages of power: man-powered, right, or human-powered, which is very labor-intensive. Then we switched agricultural revolution to animal-powered, where animals help push and pull the tools. You still need humans, but it's far less labor-intensive. And then now we're machine-powered, where machines do a lot of the work, allowing humans to do other tasks like fixing and maintaining the machines, maybe driving the machines, but so much less labor intensive. But now robots are taking over, not in a way like this, but more in a way like this, through automation. And automation is where you have robots doing the jobs that were mainly done by people. And this machine automation is a new thing, but replacing jobs that people used to do with animals or machines isn't a very new concept. We're just doing it in a much more targeted, specific, nuanced, and advanced way. But let's go back a little bit and just make sure we all understand exactly what industrialization was and how it fit with the 3 sectors of the economy. So of course, as we talked about, industrialization is when a society begins to manufacture on a large scale, right? We're talking mass production, mass consumption, and jobs move from primary sector to secondary sector. Now you still need people in the primary sector, but that went from being the biggest amount of jobs to the secondary sector having most of the jobs. But then there comes deindustrialization, and that's when a society begins to decrease the amount of manufacturing. And jobs move from the secondary sector to the tertiary sector. And just like before, of course, we still have some jobs in the primary and secondary sectors, but the majority of jobs soon, possibly even the vast majority of jobs, will be in the tertiary sector. In this chart, super blurry, but it shows from the 1980s to just a few years ago how much manufacturing in the United States went down. We can see it went down a significant amount. It has gone up in recent years, but it's still nowhere near where it was in the mid-80s. So you're probably asking to yourself right now, well, what's causing it to go down? Why did it decrease so drastically? And there's a couple reasons. The main one is offshoring, which we've learned about before, but we can get it in our notes now. That's moving some parts of the company's production or service into another country. American offshoring has most often involved moving manufacturing overseas or to Mexico. It's pretty controversial because it can save companies money and theoretically lower the price to the consumers, but it also removes jobs from Americans. And so if we're offshoring and we have this globalized system we've been talking about all year, where we're buying and selling products all over the world, where companies exist not just in one city, but in multiple countries, possibly even multiple continents, then we need to make sure we have trade agreements between these countries that work for everyone. And there's two main types of trade agreements. Actually, there's many types of trade agreements, but you'll often hear these two types because these are two of the options that people in America are wanting. And free trade is where countries can buy and sell with each other without tariffs or restrictions, no added taxes. And this could be a good thing because businesses can sell products internationally. But it can also be bad because factory jobs often go to developing countries just so they can pay workers way less than they normally would. There's probably less regulations on safety in the workplace, so it's not all amazing. And free trade's often opposed to fair trade, which, who gets to decide what's fair? And so fair trade is when countries work with each other to develop fair, quote-unquote, rules to help everyone benefit. The good is it makes it harder to exploit workers. The bad is it could slow down business or cost more to buy goods. It could limit opportunities we have to buy and sell things. And you have disagreements on what exactly is a fair trade deal. But because of offshoring and deindustrialization, we are now in a post-industrial society, moving throughout it. And Daniel Bell, he was the first person to use this term post-industrial all the way back in the 70s, and he said a post-industrial society are characterized by these features. To put it simply, you have a transition from the production of goods, that secondary sector, to the production of services, that tertiary sector. You have the replacement of blue-collar, manual labor type jobs with technical, professional workers. You have the development of newer scientific disciplines, often involving computers and the internet, artificial intelligence. And then you have this stronger emphasis on university, going to college, because we need people with critical thinking skills, people who could advance the technology we have and not just do a simple task over and over again on an assembly line. And so as our country navigates through a post-industrial society, that's been changing our society. As we've been trading more and more around the world, it begs the questions of how do we look at other countries around the world? Should we be just America first if we are dependent on other countries to help produce the lifestyles that we've become accustomed to? When we had a lot of manufacturing in America, there was a lot of middle-class jobs there, and many of those jobs have gone away. How do those people replace that income, replace that self-worth that comes from it? These are important questions that need to be answered, and people are fighting over right now. And so those were our notes on industry. As always, you can do one of the three options, taking notes or writing or recording a short reflection, and then you submit it to Industry Notes on Schoology. We'll see you back in class.